In today's video, I'm going to teach you everything about Figma Auto Layout, how to create flexible frames, responsive components, and layouts that adapt to any screen size effortlessly. Let's dive in. First, let's start with what Auto Layout is and why it's so useful. Well, Auto Layout in Figma is a feature that lets frames respond dynamically to content changes, making your designs more responsive, adaptable, and easier to manage. Let me show you how it works. Before we start, make sure to grab a copy of this file from the link in the description to follow along with this tutorial easily. Alright, first let me show you how you can add auto layout to any element. Here, as you can see, we have three different cards. We have three different groups and they are not inside any frame. So in order to add auto layout to any element in Figma, what you can do is select that element, head over to the layout section right here in the design panel, and under the layout section, you'll see that we have a few options. By default, it's always set to freeform, which means that this particular element is not responsive. Then we have these other options as well. We have vertical, we have horizontal, and we have grid. These are different auto layout options that we are going to discuss in a few minutes. And we also have this option, use auto layout. You can either choose the layout option from these tabs or click this icon to add auto layout to this particular card. But for now, I'm just going to select all these cards. I'm going to hold down the shift key on my keyboard and select them all. And then I'm going to hit this icon, use auto layout. The shortcut for that is shift and A. Make sure to remember that because it's going to save you so much time. So I'm going to hit shift and A, and immediately you'll see that the arrangement of these cards has been changed, right? So now, as you can see, our groups are placed inside this frame. Figma automatically created this frame because whenever you want to use auto layout, you should either have a frame already, or if you don't, Figma will place your elements inside a frame in order to make sure that your layout is responsive. So that's basically how auto layout works. So keep that in mind. In order to use auto layout, you need to use frames. So now we have this frame. Let me rename it to frame. And as you can see, these cards are placed next to each other. And on the right side, now we have the auto layout section because we already placed these cards inside an auto layout frame. So here, as I already mentioned, we have a few options. We have the freeform, which basically means that we have no auto layout at all. Then we have vertical, horizontal, and grid. So basically, these two are different directions of an auto layout frame. When it comes to auto layout, we can choose different directions. We can either choose vertical, just like this. If you want to stack different elements vertically, you can choose the vertical option. If you want your elements to sit next to each other, you can use horizontal, just like that. And then if you want to have a two-dimensional layout grid, you can use the grid option and create a two-dimensional grid like this. But for now, we are not going to discuss the grid option. You need to remember that when you add auto layout to your elements, Figma will automatically set the direction based on the arrangement of your elements. If you're not happy with that direction, you can always modify it here. So here we have our auto layout frame. I'm going to move it down. And right here, we have other properties apart from these directions. Okay, here we have the width property, which allows you to adjust the width of this auto layout frame. Then we have the height property, which allows you to adjust the height of this auto layout frame. And here you have the alignment options. Basically, it allows you to change the alignment of the children of your parent frame. So what's the parent and children relationship here? Well, here we have this main frame, which is the parent of these children inside. These cards are considered the children of this frame, and this frame is basically the parent of these children. Okay, so if you want to change the alignment of the children inside this parent frame, you need to use these options right here. But let's see what happens if I change the alignment. I'm going to change it to, let's say, top right. As you can see, nothing happens. Why? Because right now this frame is hugging the content inside. However, if I try to change the frame's dimension, maybe make it a bit bigger, just like this, okay? And then change the alignment, look what happens. Now we have some room inside and we can change the alignment of the children inside, just like that, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna undo the operation. I'm gonna hit Control-Z or Command-Z. But we also have three more properties here. We have the horizontal gap here, which allows you to set the spacing between your elements here. If I just zoom in, you'll see that we have some empty space between these cards. This property allows you to control the spacing between your elements. Right now it's set to 37. I can either increase it or decrease it depending on my needs. You can also link these properties to your variables. Then we also have the horizontal and the vertical padding properties. These two properties allow you to add padding around your content inside this parent frame. Okay, so here I'm just gonna set the spacing back to 37. And let's say you want to add some padding around these cards. In that case, we can just increase these values. But before we do that, I'm going to change the width here. I'm going to open up this drop-down menu. And here, as you can see, we have a few resizing options. We'll get into them later on. But for now, I'm just going to set it to hog content. Currently, it's set to fixed width, which means that we have a fixed dimension. I'm going to set it to hog content, which means that now this frame is hogging the content inside, and its width will adjust dynamically based on the spacing and the content inside. Okay, so here currently the padding is set to 0. If I try to increase it, look what happens. You see that now we have some padding around these cards, and the dimension, the width, has been changed accordingly. Look what happens. Currently the width is set to 1085. If I just decrease it, look what happens. You see, now it's 1055 because we adjusted the padding. We can also add vertical padding, just like that. But here, as you can see, the height is set to fixed. I'm just going to set it to hog content. And now, as you can see, our height is also responsive. So it dynamically changes based on the spacing inside. So that's basically how padding works in Auto Layout. All right, now that you know the basics of Auto Layout, let me show you how you can actually create a responsive button in Figma. But before we do that, I'm going to quickly show you one cool feature. Here, as you can see, when I select this frame, we'll see this little handle here. You see that? As soon as I hover over it, my cursor changes and it says duplicate with new content. So if I just left click and drag like this, and try to expand the width of this frame, Figma will duplicate one of these cards and Figma's AI will change the content inside automatically, which is so cool. Just keep that in mind. It's so useful when you want to have a few cards, maybe a product card, and you want to duplicate it and you want to change the content automatically. It's going to be so handy. All right, I'm just going to undo it. And let's align it just like that. Before we move on, I want to take a moment to tell you about a tool that's been an absolute game changer in my design process, Mobbin. Mobbin is an extensive design reference library featuring over 500,000 screens from more than 1,200 top-tier iOS, Android, and web apps. It's an incredible resource for finding real-world design inspiration, doing competitor research, and staying up to date with the latest UI UX design trends. Need to design a login screen? Just search login in Mobbin and you'll instantly find tons of examples from top apps. Want to design a drop-down component but don't want to start from scratch? Search drop-down and see how the best digital products handle it. You can also explore complete user flows like onboarding, checkout, or sign-up processes, all laid out clearly so you can see how big brands approach similar design challenges. And the best part, you can copy and paste flows directly into your Figma files using Mobbin's Figma plugin. If you want to save hours searching for design inspiration and references, check out Mobbin. I think you'll love it. Now let's move on to the next example here. Let's create a button together. So here I have this text. In order to create a button, we have many different ways. You can create a frame. Let's hit A and just draw a frame. Then you can just add this text inside. And just let's change the color like this. And you can call it a button. Obviously, we need to change the spacing. But when you do that, when you create a button like this, whenever you try to change the text, see what happens. I'm going to change it to sign in. You see, nothing changes. The button's dimension stays the same. So basically, it's not responsive. It doesn't change dynamically. Okay, but obviously we want our elements to be responsive. So basically the dimension should change based on the content inside. To do that, what we can do is just select this frame, hit Shift and A and turn it into an auto layout frame. That's one way, but the best possible way for creating a button is just select the text. Let me just undo it quickly. Okay, here is our text. I'm gonna get rid of this frame. Just select the text, hit Shift and A and add Auto Layout to it directly. And as you can see, Figma will automatically place this text layer inside a new frame. I'm going to rename it to button, and it added some padding as well. Here we have some horizontal and vertical padding. I'm just going to change it here. I'm going to change it to 32 and 16, just like that. However, we don't have a background color for this frame. We can easily change that. I'm going to select this button frame and add a fill to it. And let's just change the color to something like this. There we go. And now this button is responsive by default. Let me just adjust the text here quickly. I'm going to change it to sign in. And as you can see, the button dynamically changes. And the reason it changes is because here the resizing option is set to hug content. We have a few resizing options that we can use in order to make our layout responsive, and we'll get into them in a few seconds. Okay, so that's basically how you can create a responsive button in Figma. If you want to change the padding, you can also do that right here on the canvas. You'll see as soon as I zoom in and I hover over these areas, these handles appear, and I can just left click and drag and adjust the padding. If I want to adjust the vertical padding simultaneously, I can hold down the Option or Alt key on my keyboard and left click and drag, just like this. Keep that in mind, it's going to be so handy. So that's our first example. Now we are going to move on to more advanced options, okay? So here, as you can see, we have a few titles, right? We have 3 different text layers. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to add Auto Layout to them. How to do that? Yes, you're right. We can either click on this icon or hit Shift and A. I'm going to hit Shift and A because I'm so lazy. The alignment looks good, and here I'm going to show you a few advanced options. If I click on this icon, this window pops up. It says Auto Layout Settings. And here we have 3 different options. We have strokes, we have canvas stacking, and we have align text baseline. So here by default, it's set to disable. Let me show you what it means. Each text layer has a baseline. If I just hover over these texts, you'll see this blue line appears. This is the baseline of this text layer. And this is the baseline of this text layer. And this is the baseline of this text layer, okay? When you want to use Auto Layout and align 2 text layers with different sizes, just like what we have here, as you can see here, we have a very large text layer, then we have a bit smaller text layer, and here we have a much smaller text layer. When you want to align multiple text layers with different sizes, you need to make sure that they are aligned based on their baseline. Okay, not like what we have here. So what we can do is select this frame and just enable this option, okay? And as soon as I do that, you'll see that now these text layers are aligned based on their baseline, which is a great practice. So that's one option to keep in mind that exists here. Then we have these 2 options as well. Let's see what they are. Here we have a few profile images, just like that. I'm just gonna select them, okay? And I'm gonna hit Shift and A to add Auto Layout to them. When it comes to these properties, you can also use negative values. For example, here, the gap between these elements is set to 42. But if I want these elements to overlap, I can just set a negative value, just like this. And as you can see, now we have overlapping elements. And now that these elements are overlapping, I'm going to show you this option. We have canvas stacking. Currently, it's set to last on top. We can change it to first on top, just like that, to change the arrangement depending on our needs. So keep that in mind. And we also have this option, strokes, excluded, included. So if you have an element with a stroke and you add Auto Layout to it, you can decide whether you want the stroke, the border around it, to be included in the dimension of your parent frame or be excluded. That's what this option does. All right, so far so good. Before we move on to the next example, I'm going to tell you something very important. If you want to change the order of these elements within your parent frame, within your Auto Layout frame, what you can do is change it right here in the Layers panel. You can just left click, drag it, and drop it like that. Or alternatively, an easier way is to just use the arrow keys on your keyboard, just like that. Awesome. Now let's move on to the next topic. Spacing mode. So here, as you can see, we have a tab bar, and inside this tab bar frame, we have a few tabs, all right? But this tab bar is not responsive, as you can see. So to make it responsive, you know what to do. You just need to add auto layout to it. So I'm going to hit Shift and A on my keyboard. And now this icon indicates that this is an auto layout frame. This icon indicates that this is a simple frame, but this one indicates that this is an auto layout frame. If I try to change the dimension, look what happens. Well, it's still not responsive, so how can we fix that? Well, in order to fix this issue, we need to change the spacing mode. When it comes to spacing mode, we have two options, packed and space between. Currently, if you take a look at this alignment area, you'll see that our children are left aligned. Okay, and this icon, these vertical lines, indicate that the spacing mode is set to packed. What we need is make sure that the spacing mode is set to space between or auto, and it means that the spacing between the children inside should be determined automatically and should be even all the time, no matter the dimension. And to change the spacing mode, what we can do is double click here, and as soon as I do that, the gap here will be set to auto. So what's the difference? Nothing changed here. Here, since the gap between is set to auto, if I try to resize this tab bar, just like this, you will see that our layout is now responsive. And the spacing between these elements is set to auto and will be determined automatically by Figma when I change the dimension. Okay, so no matter the dimension, the spacing between these elements will be the same and will be even all the time. So that's basically how you can change the spacing mode from packed to auto. Alternatively, what you can do is just open up this drop-down menu and set it to auto. So that's the other way. All right, cool. Now let's move on to the next example. Here, as you can see, I have a simple frame. Okay, it's not an auto layout frame. And inside I have these two frames. Okay. What I'm going to do is turn this frame into an auto layout frame first. I'm going to hit Shift and A, and now we have an auto layout frame. And inside this auto layout frame, we have two simple frames, right? So if I select this frame, this parent frame, and I head over to the width property here, you will see that we have a few options. We have fixed width, we have hog content, we have add min width, add max width, and apply variable. Okay, we are going to discuss these two later, but for now, let's discuss fixed width and hog content. Well, fixed width is so simple. If I set this width to, let's say, 500 pixels, this value will be fixed all the time, and it won't change dynamically based on the content inside. So no matter how much content we have inside this frame, the width of this parent frame will be the same. Let me prove that to you. Here, I'm going to select this frame and I'm going to duplicate it a few times. As you can see, I'm duplicating these frames inside this parent frame, but the dimension of this parent frame is intact. That's because we set the width to fixed width and we set it to 500. However, if you want the parent frame's dimension to change dynamically based on the content inside, we need to set it to hog content. And as soon as I set it to hog content, you'll see that it's actually hogging the content inside. So the width changes based on the content inside. All right. And it's dynamic. So right now it's set to 1143. If I just get rid of, let's say, one of these frames, now it's set to 910 because now the width is dynamic. Okay. The same thing applies to height. Currently it's set to hog content, which is fine. We can set it to fixed height as well. All right, cool. Now let's get rid of these two duplicated frames. And I'm just going to align this parent frame to the center like that. And now I'm going to select one of these frames inside this parent frame. Basically, I'm going to select one of these children. If I select the child of this parent frame and I head over to the width and height properties, here you'll see that we have a new resizing option and it's called fill container. So we have fixed width, fill container, and hog content. Let's see what it does. When I select fill container, you'll see that nothing happens, but here it says width set to fixed for frame. What does it mean? When I change the resizing option of this child, the resizing option of the parent frame changes automatically. Now it's set to fixed width again. If I set it back to hog content, you'll see that the width of this child inside changes to fixed width. Okay? But let's see what it does. I'm going to set it to fill container. And as soon as I do that, you think that, all right, everything is the same, but it's not. Now, if I try to change the width of this parent frame, this child's dimension inside this parent frame will change dynamically. Okay, let's see what happens. You see that? Because I set it to fill container, it tries to take up as much space as possible within its parent frame. That's why the width of this parent frame changed to fixed width instead of hot content. But what if I set this one to fill container as well? Well, if I do that, you'll see that now both of them change dynamically. And the gap between is determined by this property. You can adjust it according to your needs. So sometimes you might need to set the width of one element to fixed. For example, here I can set it to fixed width and just make it a bit smaller and just set the width of this element to fill container. And in this case, this element will be always fixed, but this one will change dynamically. So that's how fill container works. If it's so confusing, don't worry, it's normal. I'm going to show you a few examples in a few seconds so you can truly comprehend it. All right, here I have a frame and inside I have a text layer. It's a simple frame. And if I try to change this text, you'll see that this frame is not responsive. I'm just going to make it a bit longer, just like that. You'll see that our text will cut off because this frame is not responsive. So to make it responsive, you know what to do. You just need to select this frame, hit Shift and A, and now it's responsive. And the resizing option is set to hug and hug. Nice, that's what we need. And if I try to make this text a bit longer, look what happens. The parent's frame dynamically changes, so the height dynamically increased. And that's exactly what we need. But here, if I select the text inside, you'll see that the width is set to fixed width. We can set it to hot content or fill container. Hot content doesn't make any sense here, but we can set it to fill container as well. Let me show you what the difference is here. Let's say we want to have a fixed width frame here, okay? What we can do is just set the width to, let's say, 750. Just like that. And then we also want the text inside to fill its parent container. So what we can do here is set the width here to fill container. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that we still have this fixed frame, but now our content inside tries to take up as much space as possible within its parent frame. Okay. And if I try to make it a bit longer, like this, you'll see that it expands vertically because our height is still set to hot content, but our width is set to 750. If we decide to change the width here, look what happens. You see, no matter how big or how small it gets, our text layer inside will fill its container. So that's one example. If it's still confusing, don't worry. I'm going to show you another example. Here, as you can see, we have a card. And inside we have a few elements, and this card is not responsive at all. So what we are going to do is make this card responsive together. To do that, you need to understand a few things. First, you need to know that we can combine different auto layout frames with each other. For example, we can have nested auto layout frames. We can have one horizontal auto layout frame, and inside we can have different vertical auto layout frames. That's possible. And that's why auto layout is so powerful. And the other thing is that you can combine different resizing options with each other as well, depending on your needs. Let me show you what I mean. First, I'm going to select this card and I'm going to duplicate it and place it right here because later on I'm going to show you another cool feature of Figma. But now let's see how we can make this card responsive. Okay, so what we need to do is try to group elements based on their arrangement and relationship. So here we know that we want these two elements, this ellipse and this text layer, to stay next to each other all the time, right? So what we need to do is select these two, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and select them one by one and just add auto layout to them. Hit Shift and A, and now we have this auto layout frame. The direction is already determined properly. It's set to horizontal and the resizing option is set to hot content. It's fine for now. Later on, we might need to change that. Then we'll get into these text layers, okay? Here we have the title, we have the timeline, and we have the company name. So how should we group these? Well, what we can do is select these two, okay? Hit Shift and A and create a vertical auto layout, just like that. And then I can select this auto layout frame, hold down the Shift key and select this company name, and place them inside another auto layout frame. Hit Shift and A and create a horizontal auto layout frame. Let me show you what I mean. So here we have one large horizontal auto layout frame And inside we have another auto layout frame and this title, and they sit next to each other horizontally. So that's what I mean by nesting auto layout frames. All right, and we are going to repeat the same thing for all these elements. I'm just going to select these two, hit Shift and A, then I'm going to select this and this, hit Shift and A. Nice. Let me repeat that quickly, like this, and these two. Okay, so now we have our auto layout frames, and the last thing we need to do is select this card frame and turn it into an auto layout frame. So I'm going to hit Shift and A, and here, as you can see, the spacing changed a bit. Why? Because now inside we have a few auto layout frames, and the gap between them is set to 45. So we have an equal spacing between them, which is not good in terms of visual hierarchy. So how can we fix this issue? Well, since we want to have a much larger gap here, we need to select these frames and place them inside another auto layout frame. Okay, so I'm going to hit Shift and A, and now they are inside another frame. And now if I select the card frame, the main frame, I can determine the spacing between these two elements, between these two frames. So let's select this card and just increase the gap, just like that. I'm going to set it to 80 for now. Okay, so far so good. Now let's check whether our card is truly responsive or not. I'm just going to change the dimension here. And as you can see, it's fully responsive. The reason it's responsive is because here, if I select this main frame, you'll see its width is already set to fill container. If it was set to hog content, it would look like this, which is not good. And the resizing option of the children inside is also set to fill container. It's so important. If you did everything right and it didn't work, make sure to check out the resizing options, because sometimes the resizing options won't change automatically. And for example, they would look like this. And when you try to change the card's dimension, these elements, these frames won't be responsive. And that's because the resizing option is not set to fill container. So now if I just select them all and change the resizing option to fill container, and we need to make sure that the spacing mode is set to auto as well for these frames. So I'm going to select these frames and I'm going to set it to auto. And as you can see now, since the spacing mode is set to auto, the elements inside will be aligned to the far left side and to the far right side of this main frame. Okay, and now you'll see that this card is fully responsive. So I'm just going to align it to the center. And now I'm going to show you another cool thing. If you're not sure how you need to group these elements correctly, and you're not sure about the direction of your auto layout frame, Figma has a very cool and useful feature, and that is Auto Layout Suggest. So let's say you have this card group, okay, and inside you have all these elements and it's not responsive. What you can do is just right click on it, and right here under the Add Auto Layout option, you'll have more layout options, and it says Suggest Auto Layout. If I click on that, look what happens. Figma will automatically create those auto layout frames for you. But keep in mind that it's not always perfect. For instance, here, if I just select this frame, you will see that the way it grouped it doesn't make any sense. Because here we have this frame and inside we have these two text layers, which is fine. But it also grouped all these company names vertically. That doesn't make sense. And when you hand over the project to the developer, they'll quickly realize that something doesn't make sense because this text, this company name, is related to this product designer title, right? So it should be grouped with these. That's why you need to always double check the way Figma groups your elements, okay? But if you want to master auto layout, I highly suggest not to use this option and always try to create the layout manually. Okay, once you mastered it, it's fine. You can always use the quicker way. So I'm just going to get rid of this card and let's move on to our final exercise 1. So now that you know how auto layout works, how resizing options work, how spacing mode works, let's create a responsive card together using these elements, using this thumbnail, let's say, and these tags, these titles, and this button. Okay. To create this card, we can either use this card frame, or what we can do is just select this thumbnail. Let me bring it here. hit Shift and A to add auto layout to it. Then I'm going to select this frame and let's call it card. And I'm going to add a fill to it. A white background looks fine. And I can increase the padding. Let's set the padding to 16 and 16 for now. Later on, we might need to change that. And we can also increase the corner radius here to make it a bit rounded. Just like this, I'm going to set it to 16. Now what we need to do is add these elements to this card, right? So here, I'm going to drag and drop this text inside this frame, and I'm going to make it black, or let's say dark gray. Then I'm going to drag and drop this text here and make it dark gray as well, maybe a bit lighter to have a better visual hierarchy. Okay, and now I'm going to select these two, and since they are related and I'm going to change the gap between them individually, I'm going to place them inside another auto layout frame. So I'm going to hit Shift and A, just like that, and let's rename it to title and description. Okay, nice. I'm going to leave the gap as is. 8 pixels looks fine, and the resizing option looks fine for now. We might need to change that a bit later. Then I'm going to select these tags, okay, and just bring them right here. And as you can see, they are stacked vertically. That's because our card layout is set to vertical. Okay, so now since we want these tags to stay next to each other horizontally, we need to select them and we need to add auto layout to them and change the layout to horizontal. The gap between them looks fine. And we also need to have this button right here. So I'm just going to drag and drop it, and let's get rid of these tags. So let's see what we need to change here. What we need to do is place this button right here. How can I do that? Yes, you're right. We need to select this button and this title and description frame and place them inside another auto layout frame. So I'm going to select them both simultaneously, hit Shift and A, and just change the layout to horizontal like that. And I'm going to change the order of these elements. So I'm going to select the button, use the arrow key on my keyboard, and place it on the right side of this frame. But we also want to make sure that this frame takes up the whole available space within this card. Currently, the width is set to hug. So what we need to do is change it to fill container. And as soon as I do that, as you can see, this frame now, this content frame, let me rename it to content, is taking up the whole available width within its parent frame. And that's exactly what we need. However, this button inside is not aligned to the right side. So how can we fix this issue? Well, just like what we did here, if you remember, we need to change the spacing mode for this content frame. Currently it's set to packed. We just need to change it to auto. And now this button always stays on the right side of this main frame, its parent frame. And the spacing between them will be determined automatically depending on the width of its parent frame. Hope it makes sense. Okay, cool. Now let's select our card and just increase the gap between these elements a bit. Just like this. I'm going to set it to 24. It looks fine. And also, I'm going to increase the padding here. I'm going to set it to 24 and 24. Looks much better to have some white space around our content. And let's see whether our card is responsive or not. So I'm just going to select this card and just resize it. Okay, it's fine. Our thumbnail is taking up the whole available width. However, as you can see, it doesn't look very good. So what we need to do is select this image and just head over to the fill option. And from this drop-down menu, change it from crop to fill, just like that. And now it will be truly responsive. You see that? One other thing you can do is select this image and just lock the aspect ratio here under the layout section. If you lock the aspect ratio of this thumbnail will be intact no matter what the dimension of this card is. Let me show you what I mean. You see, now the aspect ratio will be intact and will be maintained because it's locked. So keep that in mind. You have different options to choose from. But what about these tags? Well, let's say instead of having 3 tags, we had more tags. Let me just use this handle and just increase the number of tags we have here. And AI is replacing the content automatically. However, now as you can see, our tags are cut off. How can we fix this issue? Well, in this case, we need to make sure that our parent frame is set to wrap. Here, as you can see, we have this little icon and it's called wrap. If I turn this on and I try to make this frame a bit smaller, you see that now it's wrapping the content inside. So let's say we duplicate these tags a few more times, just like this. You see that now our card is fully responsive. So keep that in mind, and you see that we have a fully responsive card now, which is perfect. Awesome. Now let's discuss another feature, which is minimum width and maximum width. We also have minimum height and maximum height. Sometimes you want to set size limits for your elements. Let's say you want to make sure that this card won't grow beyond a specific value, okay? No matter the content inside. In that case, you can add a maximum width for this card. Currently, we have a fixed width. What we can do is set it to hog content for now, and we can also add a maximum width, just like this. Let's say we want to make sure that it won't grow beyond 560 pixels, okay? So I'm going to set it to 560. And now if I try to make this picture a bit bigger, like this, you will see that it won't allow it because we have those size limits. You see these red lines? These are our constraints. The same thing applies to minimum width. Let's say you want to make sure that your card won't shrink smaller than a particular value. In that case, you can add a minimum width. I'm going to add a minimum width of, let's say, 400 pixels. And now if I try to make it a bit smaller, like this, you'll see that as soon as I hit 400, it won't shrink anymore. That's so useful when you want to create fully responsive layouts in Figma. Keep that in mind. The same thing applies to minimum height and maximum height. Let's say we want to have a maximum height of 650 pixels, okay? In this case, if I just keep adding tags here, you see, now our card won't grow. All right, cool. Now let's move on to our last example here, which is ignore auto layout or absolute position. There are times that while you're using auto layout, you don't want particular elements to take up space within your auto layout frame. Okay, let me show you what I mean. Here we have this notification item, and it's fully responsive because it's using auto layout, okay? But let's say you want to add this badge right here on the top right corner. And since it's using auto layout, if I try to place it inside, it will be placed here. There is no way I can place it right here in this corner and it will still be responsive, right? Well, there is a way, and that is called absolute position or ignore auto layout. If I place it inside and while it's selected, I head over to the position section, you will see that we have this option which is called ignore auto layout, but it was called absolute position before. They are the same. If I enable this, you may say, well, nothing happens, but something important happened. Now the icon of this badge, the icon of this element changed to this, and it indicates that this item is no longer taking up space within our auto layout frame, okay? And I can freely move it around, just like this. You see that? It's still inside our auto layout frame, but it's ignoring the auto layout. I hope it makes sense. If I place it right here, and I try to resize this notification item, which is responsive, look what happens. Nothing, right? Well, that's because we need to change its constraints as well. If I select it, you'll see that its current constraints are set to top and left, but I want to make sure that it always stays on the top right corner. So I'm going to change its constraints to top and right. And now if I select this notification item and I try to resize this notification item, you'll see that it will always stay on the top right corner, no matter the dimension of this item. All right, so we've discussed all the important things about auto layout. However, we barely discussed the grid option, which is a bit more advanced, and I have a separate comprehensive video about it. So make sure to check out the grid video on my channel if you want to master how to create two-dimensional layouts in Figma. Thanks for watching this video, and if you found it helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more design tutorials. Have a beautiful day and see you soon.